NDO, am I?
Okay, we're going to start now, okay?
Perfect.
Just starting to see. Right. Yeah, fine. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Good morning. I'm going to start off with a siyum, Ili Nishmas, my mother, Chaya Etel Bas David Ayay HaKohen, whose yahrzeit is tonight. We're making a siyum on Maseches Chagiga. Maseches Chagiga is essentially divided into two parts. The first part of the Masechta deals with all of the halachis related to the karbonis of Yom Tov, Karban Re'iyah, Shalmei Chagiga, Shalmei Simcha. And the second part of the Masechta deals with Tumah and Tara, which is appropriate in anticipation of the Yom Tovim, because everyone used to prepare themselves by making themselves tahor before coming to Yerushalayim, so that they would be able to participate in the karbonis. So the Gemara concludes a bit of sort of an upside agadita. Amar Reish Lakish, ein or shel Gehenim sholetes beposhe Yisrael. The or of Gehenim does not have any dominion over poshe Yisrael. Taisus explains poshe Yisrael doesn't mean people who do severe chomradik averis, but those who do lighter averis. Kal v'chomer mimizbach hazav, and it's a kal v'chomer from the mizbach hazav. The mizbach hazav, which was inside the heichal, in which they burned the ketoris every day. So ma mizbach hazav she'ein oleh ela ka'ovi din hazav, just like the mizbach hazav, which only has a very thin plating, covering of gold over the wood frame of the mizbeach. Kama shonim ein ha'or shaletes bo. Nevertheless, every day they burn the ketoris on the mizbeach, and nevertheless, this very thin layer of gold protects the wood that it shouldn't burn. So Poshe Yisrael shemaleya mitzvos karimon. Poshe Yisrael, despite the fact that they're Poshe Yisrael, nevertheless, we know that they are Maleim mitzvos karimon. How do you know? The pasuk says, "Kefelach harimon rakoseich al tikri rakoseich." The word rakoseich is really a contraction of el reikonim shebach. Those who we view as empty, nevertheless, they're kefelach harimon, that they're full of mitzvos, Maleim mitzvos karimon. Alachas kama v'kama, that the mitzvahs that they do protects them from staying in Gehenna. I think it's a very fitting end for a siyum, for a yahrzeit for my mother, Aleh Shalom, who was always able to see the good in people, in things and in people. She was able to see the positive side. And I'm sure she would relate very well to this statement that the Poshe Yisrael, despite the fact that they're Poshe Yisrael, Amamala and Mitzvos Karimot. Hadon Allah Chomer B'Kodesh Uslik Allah Maseches Chagiga. Hadon Allah Chomer B'Kodesh Uslik Allah Maseches Chagiga. Hadon Allah Chomer B'Kodesh Uslik Allah Maseches Chagiga. Hadon Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Hadon Chalon. Daitoch Allah Daiton Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Daitoch Chalon. Lo Nisas Sheminach Maseches Chagiga v'Sisn Shiminon Lo Ba'alma Hadein v'Lo Ba'alma De'osi. Hadon Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Hadon Chalon. Daiton Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Daitoch Chalon. Lo Nisas Sheminach Maseches Chagiga v'Sisn Shiminon Lo Ba'alma Hadein v'Lo Ba'alma De'osi. Hadon Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Hadon Chalon. Daiton Allah Maseches Chagiga v'Daitoch Chalon. Lo Nisas Sheminach Maseches Chagiga v'Sisn Shiminon Lo Ba'alma Hadein v'Lo Ba'alma De'osi. Irat Solul Fanecha Adon Eloheinu Lehevosenu Shetei Toroscha Monosenu V'Olam Hazeh Usei Imonu Le'Olam Haba Chanina Bar Papa Ramya Bar Papa Nachbar Bar Papa Achai Bar Papa Abamori Bar Papa Rafram Bar Papa Rochesh Bar Papa Surcha Bar Papa Ada Bar Papa Dora Bar Papa Harev No Adon Eloheinu Es Divrei Soisko B'Finu V'Yos Amcho Beis Yisrael V'Niyeh Kolonu Anachnu V'Tzetzoenu V'Tzetzoenu V'Tzetzei Amcho Beis Yisrael Kolonu Yodei Shemecha V'Lam Beis Yisrael L'Shmo. May I invite Chakmenim to Secha Kilelam Hitli be some of Kecha Lamalo Evoch. The Olam Lo Yishkach Bikudecha Kibam Chisanu Ki
Have a
soni
great
baruch
day.
atah Adonai lamdeinu chukecha, amen, 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 sela ba'ed. Modem anachnu lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'lehiosenu, shesamta cholkeinu v'yoshvei beis hamedrash, v'lesamta cholkeinu v'yoshvei kronos, she'onu mashkimu v'hem mashkimu, onu mashkimu l'divrei Torah v'hem mashkimu l'dvarim b'teilim, onu amelim v'hem amelim, onu amelim m'kablim sochor, v'hem amelim v'einu m'kablim sochor, onu rotzim v'hem rotzim, onu rotzim l'chayot l'hava, v'hem rotzim l'ver shachas, shenemar Be'ato Elohim Toridenu Be'Shachas Anshe Domim Umirma Lo Yechsu Yemeim Vani Eftach Boch Yirot Salud Fanecha Adonai Elohai Kashem Shes Artani L'Sayim Meseches Chagiga Kein Tazveni L'Haskil Mesechtes Usforim Achayim L'Saymo Lil Mod Olam Lishmo Velasos L'Chaim is called Divrei Samer Torisecha V'Yavo L'Schus Kol Atanoim V'Amadroim V'Samedei Chachamim Ya'amod Legal Zari Shalotomish Hatorim Pim Bizarim Bizera Zari Adolam B'Yiskayim B'Salech Tanche Osoch V'Shoch B'Chot Yishmar Lech V'Kisosa V'Yisisichecha Kivi Yemecha V'Yisof Chot Shnoiskayim Orish Amim B'Yimina U'Smola Oshe V'Chavod Adonai Oz Amo Yitain Adonai Varech Esam Ova Shalom Skadali Skadash Shemei Rabba Yamadra Yomad Dihuasid L'Skadato Chayamei Sayel Asaf Yesran Chay Alma Ulamivnei Karti Yushalayim Ushach Allah Behechala Begava Ulamet Karpochan Nefra Min Ada Lasava Pilchan Dishmayel Yasrei Yamlik Kuchabriku Malchu Sevi Korei the Chaye Chonavi Mechona the Chay Robeis Israel Bagalos Mankodiv Bimru Amen Ishmei Rabban Barach Lamam Yomei Omaya Yisbach Shabach Yisber Samam Yisnasei Yisador Vis Alevis Halosh Med Gudushav Rifu Elam Kol Bechasa Vishirasa Tishpasa Venechmasa Tamiram Di Alamav Yimru Amen Al Yisrael Rabban Val Tamidei Hon Al Kol Tamidei Samidei Hon Al Commandos Kim Doin Raisa Di Yasra Dein Di Vachavasar Vasar the Halo Honor Lechon Shlover Rabba, Chinam Chizra, Kamin, the Kaina Rich, and the Son of the Bifei, Ufa, Konim and Kodam Abu in the Shmaya of the Yaravim, Du, Amen. The Hey Shlomo Rabba, and Shmaya of a Kayin, Malain, we all call Yisrael, Du, Amen. Say Shalom, Bim Rambov, we say Shalom Aleinu, we call Yisrael, Du, Amen. Amen. Okay, this morning we're going to be discussing the question of whether you're allowed to do medical procedures on a parent. In Yonim of Kibbut of the Aim were always central to my mother, and this is a fitting topic to learn Le'ilui Nishmosa. So the two questions that we're going to discuss, number one, can a child do medical procedure on a parent? Number two, can a child give an injection to a parent? The beginning of this discussion really is the pasuk in Shmos, in Perek Chaf Aleph. The pasuk says, "Umake aviv v'imo mosumos." Someone who hits his parent, mother or father, he's chayav misa. So if you look at the first page in the sheet, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, right at the top, Maslisin, the Mishnah defines what is this makeh that we're talking about. Hamakeh aviv v'imo eno chayev ad sheyasa behem chabura. Someone who hits his parent is not chayev the misa of the isur of makeh aviv v'imo unless he makes a chabur, unless he makes a wound, he draws blood.
No.
If he hits a parent without drawing blood, then it's also just like it's also to hit any Jew. The limit for that is in the pasuk by Makos. It says Lo Yosef. You're not allowed to add any more Makos than he's entitled to. Well, some a person who didn't do anything, he's not entitled to any Makos. So if you hit him at all, already you're over Lo Yosef. So the question really is focused, if you turn to the second page or the back side of that first page, if you look down near the bottom of the Gemara, it's interesting that this question is raised on Pei Daled and the Mishnah that we just read is on Pei Hey, but Ein Mukdam Mucher, I guess. Gemara says as follows, Iboyeluhu, the Tanoim asked the Kasha, Ben Mahu Shiyakiz Dam La'oviv. In the times of the Gemara, Hakozes Dam, bloodletting, was a very common therapeutic procedure. So the Gemara declares a shaila, can a son do it for his father? In so doing, he's letting blood. He's going to be chayav misa l'chora. Rav Masna says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." Based on the pasuk, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." If you look what's underlined in Rashi on the left, Rashi says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha lo husaru Yisrael milasos lechavreim eladava she'eno chafetz lasos li'atzmo." The only prohibition to do something to your friend if it's something that you would not want to have done to yourself. Now, if you needed hakosas dam, and that was an essential, for a refuah, then of course you would want it done to yourself. So therefore, you're allowed to do it to your father as well. Rav Dimi Bar Chena brings a different proof. He says, the pasuk says, "Makei Adam u'makei behema." You have two psukim. One talks about Makei Adam mos yumos and Makei behema yishalmena. So there's this juxtaposition leads one to conclude there's this comparison between them. Ma Makei behema l'refuah potter. If you do something to an animal with the intent of you had to do something to cure the animal, af Makei Adam l'refuah potter. So if you do the hakah, your motzi dam from a parent, but it's done for the purposes of refuah, then it's mutter. However, the Gemara continues with two maisalach, which seems to contradict the statement that was just made. The Gemara says, Rav Papa, that's a little aleph in the Bach changes Rav to Rav Papa. Rav Papa, loy shavik lebrei lemishkale silua. Rav Papa didn't allow his son to take out a thorn, a thorn or splinter, and in so doing, he would draw blood. So he didn't allow him to do it. Mar berei de Ravina lo shavach lebrei lemiftach le kafsa. Mar berei Ravina didn't allow his son to lance a boil. Dilma chavel v'havel le'shigas isa. Maybe he's going to draw blood, meaning he's going to draw more than is absolutely necessary for the medical procedure, and in which case it's going to be a shkaga and something which is iser, an iser of perhaps chenek, as the Gemara said before. This is one of Eloha Nechnokim, is make of v'imo. So the question really is, the issue is, what's pshat in the Gemara that right after it tells you for refuah you're allowed to do it, right away it brings two maisalach where the fathers didn't allow their children to do a medical procedure for them. Is that a retraction of the original statement? Or is this telling you that there are special considerations over here? So as we'll see, perhaps Rav Papa and Mar berei Ravina had other reasons. They were afraid that their son would do more than necessary, number one, or because there was someone else available. Why does my son have to do it? If I can get someone else, this is a relatively straightforward procedure. If I can get someone else to do it, why should my son do it? I should have to get someone else. So based on this contradiction, there are different opinions in the Rishonim. I don't have the source. I didn't put the source in, but both the Rif and the Rosh learned that the stories of Rav Papa and Mar berei Ravina were a retraction, and that it's never permitted to have your son do a medical procedure, even if there's no one else, assuming that there's no sakana. Of course, if you're talking about a sakana, then that trumps everything. If you look at the Rosh and the Rif, they make no mention of any exception when there's someone else available. They just say straight out that you're not allowed to do it. The Rambam, if you look at the Rambam, is the second source on the sheet. The Rambam says, Hamakis dam la'oviv, o shahoya rofe, v'chotach le'basar o aver, is potter. Someone who is makis dam, he does bloodletting, or he's a doctor and he has to amputate a limb, then he's potter if he does it for his father. Afal pishu potter, even though he's potter because he's doing it for refuah, but lechatchila lo yaseh. Initially, he shouldn't do it. or if he has to remove a thorn, mibasa aviv, or ima v'lo yotzi shema yasa chabura, he shouldn't do it lest he make a chabura. B'amed dvar mamurim, so here the Rambam inserts the qualification. B'amed dvar mamurim k'shiyesham acher lasos. That's only when there's someone else available to do it. Avalon ein sham mi sheyasa elahu, but if there's no one else available to do it other than the son, that's criteria number one. Criteria number two, varehein mitztarin, they're in pain from what the condition that they have. Hareze makiz v'choyzech k'dei kefi ma sheyirshu lasos. That as much as they will allow him to do, he's allowed to do. And the Kesef Mishnah essentially brings the same stipulation, what's underlined, avalam ein sham mi sheyasa elahu, then they're allowed to do it. Yes.
There are other people that can do it, so the son is the best person.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute.
Rabbi,
Yes.
question. Do you think this in any way is a remote source? Or I believe in the medical profession, don't they say like a surgeon shouldn't operate on his own family member or things like that because of emotions or whatever?
Right.
This is not Shiur at all.
I don't think so, but that's certainly a very valid concern. We'll see in a minute what happens when the parents specifically want the son to do it. Right. So la halacha, the Shulchan Aruch, it's interesting. The Shulchan Aruch pass. If you look at the middle of the page, Shulchan Aruch and Yoredeya, Hilchas Kibbut Ava Aim in Siman Reish Mem Aleph, the Shulchan Aruch says as follows: Hoya kotz tochav la'aviv, if there is a thorn embedded in his father, lo yotzienu, he shouldn't take it out. Shema yovo lasos bo chabur. V'chein imhu makis dam. Similarly, if he's doing some bloodletting or rofe, or he's a doctor, lo yakis dam la'aviv, v'lo yachtoch lo ever. He shouldn't do any hakosas dam, and he shouldn't do any sort of amputation if that's what's necessary. Even though he isn't doing it, he's intending to do it for refuah. So the mechaber makes no mention of whether there's someone else available or not. If there's no one else available, he just says straight out that you're not allowed to do it, period. Hagah, the Ramah adds in, Bamed Dvarim Amurim, the stipulation that we saw, B'sheyesham acher lasos. When do we say this? When there's someone else available to do it, then the son shouldn't do it. Avolim ein sham acher lasos v'hu mitztayer. If there's no one else there to do it and the parent is suffering, harehu makiz v'choisei, he can do the bloodletting, whatever needs to be done. Kefi mashi yershu lasos, according to what they will allow him to do. And we'll come back to this phrase. They keep on repeating what the parents allow him to do. That's the Ramah. So it's interesting. I don't have an answer that just occurred to me. Everyone learns that the Rambam prohibits it categorically. Even if there's someone else who can do it, the Rambam doesn't allow. And the Ramah adds the stipulation that if there's someone else who can do it, you should preferably allow someone else to do it first. But if there's no one else, then you can do it yourself. Now, the Mechaber, that's the Beis Yosef. And the Beis Yosef, we just read before in the Hilchas, in the Kesef Mishnah, which is the Beis Yosef, he mentions this stipulation of that's only if there's no one else there that you can do it. So I don't know whether I might have said that the Ramah is really just interpreting what the Mechaber means, and everyone agrees that if there's no one else to do it, that you can. But that doesn't seem to be the way most of the Mefarshim view it. The Aruch HaShulchan adds, I guess in this question, we've been talking about if there's no one else, Ein Sham Acher. What does it mean, Ein Sham Acher? There's no one else to do it. So there are a number of ways that you can translate Ein Sham Acher. One hand, you could say Ein Sham Acher means categorically, absolutely. There's no one else available, and there's no other way it can be done without the son. The Shiur and Shuvas Chelkas Yoav defines it a little bit more broadly. Ein Sham Acher meaning there's no one else available, readily available. But if there's someone available, but it's a tremendous tircha to get a hold of them, you have to travel far to get to them, or it's very hard to get an appointment to see them, then that would be considered Ein Sham Acher. There's no one else. The Aruch HaShulchan, if you look at the notes on the bottom of the page, the Aruch HaShulchan, just the last line of the Aruch HaShulchan, he basically repeats what we've been saying, and he says, "V'chein imhu ose betov yoser me'acher, v'oviv chofetz bo yochel lasos." So he's defining Ein Sham Acher, meaning that if there's no one else, he is the world's greatest surgeon, or he's very skilled, and the parent Bedafka wants him to do it, then he would be able to do it. On this question, just one other thing, on this question of where we kept on mentioning what the parent will allow, what is the significance of the parent allowing? So the mincha, if you look at the next sheet, the Minchas Chinuch, and of all the underlining, if you go just in the middle of the underlined section, the Minchas Chinuch is discussing the question of what happens if the parents are moch. The parents allow, I say, well, go ahead and then you can do it. If it causes me bleeding, that's quite all right. I don't mind. So the Minchas Chinuch is a unique shita that he holds that if the parents are mochel, then the child is allowed to do it. Minchas Chinuch says in the middle, Aval gabe maka, ein kan avera klal. As far as by Makalel, he said before, maybe there would be a tzad to say that it should be asa, because even if the parent is mochel, after all is said and done, the klala usually invokes the Shem Hashem. So you're doing a Shem Hashem perhaps unnecessarily. But lagabe maka ein kan avera klal. There's no avera at all. Lo b'chavero v'lo b'av ve'im. Right? According to the Minchas Chinuch, no matter what, if the parent is mochel, then there's no Isa for the child to do it. So there's another, yes?
Isn't it obvious that the whole prohibition is if there's intent to do harm?
Doesn't say that in the pasuk. It just says if you hit your father and cause a wound, you're chayav misa.
But if you do it accidentally, you don't get misa.
You don't get misa. So it's a shogeg.
You had to have done it on purpose.
Right. You have to do it on, that's like every avera. You have to do it on purpose. But edim v'hasra, you have to have witnesses. They have to warn you of the consequences of what you're about to do. And you do it anyway, then you're chayav misa. But that doesn't mean it's mutter. Without edim v'hasra, it's still us.
But it seems strange that if it's being done for refuah, that it should be prohibited. I
mean, that's a svara, but the Torah says specifically, unless I start without the Gemara, which gave me these examples, the limit of the Gemara, you needed a pasuk to tell me that refuah, it's mutter. The hekesh between behema and adam, it wasn't so poshut that it's automatic. You needed a source for that. Yes, Shiur.
So what about, what if your parent is unconscious, like he can't give you the head tear, or he can't say, I only want my son to do it? Then that's like a different situation.
Well, it still falls under the same, I would think, it still falls under the same category. If there's someone else who can do it, then they should do it. If there's no one else who can do it, then the son is allowed to do it himself. Yes?
Question. If your son is a doctor.
Yes.
So you're saying l'chatchila he should not do any procedure? Is that what the Gemara is saying?
Right. L'chatchila he should not, unless there's no one else who's.
What if the son knows that the other doctor that's available is not such a good doctor? Because doctors know among themselves who is more
who knows what he's doing and who doesn't. Right. Right. So I would assume in a case like that, the son can assume that he falls under the category of Ein Sham Acher. There's no one else with his level of capability. So that's Ein Sham Acher, then the son is allowed to do it.
Use the word maket.
Right.
To doing a procedure.
Because in the court, no, maket is defined as drawing blood. So any procedure that was a Gemara, the first mission that we had. it means to hit, but under what circumstances are you chayav for hitting? So the Gemara is defined, the Mishnah defines for you that you're only chayav misa for hitting if it actually you're always chayav for hitting. Why is makei of the imo a separate pasuk? There's a general law not to hit your fellow man, right? So the additional pasuk is telling you that when it involves drawing blood, then not only it's also, but you chayav misa. There's a chayav misa only in the case where you draw blood. But once we're talking about drawing blood, so that applies to any sort of procedure that you're going to do, simple or complex, which involves drawing blood. All right, there's a question that was raised to the Gesher HaChaim, Rabbi Chiel Tokchinsky, who Gesher HaChaim was and still is the primary source for halachas of Avelus. And he has a section which deals with a lot of shilas that come up related to someone who's sick or someone lo aleinu who's nifter. So in the first chapter of Chelik Beis of Gesher HaChaim, he has a whole discussion of a shaila that came to him about a mother who needed daily injections, and she specifically wanted her son to do it. He said, I don't know if he was a doctor or a technician, she wanted him to do it. And at first glance, you would think that giving an injection is not something which involves really special expertise. You go into any CVS, any place, so you should be able to get someone else very easily to take care of it, and therefore the son really should be prohibited from doing it. So he was matir based on three different considerations. Number one, if you recall, the concern with taking for example, taking out the thorn, the concern is that you're going to maybe dig a little deeper or go to a spot that you're not supposed to, and you're going to draw more blood than is necessary. And certainly in a medical procedure, it could be like that. But over here, when you give a shot, the shot is given into the muscle, not into. It's one thing if you're injecting into a vein, and then certainly once you pierce the vein, you're not controlled how much blood might come out. But if you're just giving a shot into the muscle, it's unlikely there may be no blood at all. And even if there is blood, that's certainly the normal amount, and you wouldn't consider that more than necessary. So that would be one svara. The second svara that he had was that in surgery or in bloodletting, the doctor has to make a decision where to cut, how much to cut, and in the case that his judgment is a little bit faulty or over-optimistic, however you want to describe it, he may wind up drawing more blood than is necessary. But here in an injection, there's a standard protocol, and there's little leeway for any sort of judgment. And you just do it 1, 2, 3.
Rabbi?
The last consideration that he had was that what we mentioned earlier, that since the son will do it for free, and any other doctor will charge, if you want to have someone to come into the house every day to give the injection, they're going to charge money for that. So that puts it into the category of ein sham acher. You can't find anyone else who's going to do it the same way the son can do it. The son can do it for free. No one else is going to do it for free. So based on those three considerations, he felt that it would be mutter for the son to come in and give his mother the injections. In addition, it so happened that both the mother and father were poor, and incurring the expense of paying someone to come in would have been a tremendous burden for them. Furthermore, he included the svara of the Minchas Chinuch, that when it's with the permission of the parent, that there's no iser at all of makei oviv. So based on, although you don't rely on that l'chatchila completely, but as an additional consideration to incorporate in the psak, that he felt you could do. Yes.
I know it's not like makeh or anything, but this stipulation that your son, and maybe the daughter, she's a doctor, I don't know, can't do these medical procedures or injections, or does that mean that if you need to go to a lab for your yearly blood work,
right,
your child can't,
Should not, your child
If
should,
a child is a technician in a lab, your
Right.
child can't do it.
correct. You should ask someone else to do it. We'll conclude with a few other examples, very commonplace examples, but you also have to be careful not to have your son do it. Now, what's interesting is Rav Tokachinsky, after he came to this conclusion that it should be mutter, he didn't want to rely only on his own svara, so he sent his tshuva to 3 rabbanim. He sent it, this was in 1944. He sent the tshuva to Rav Herzog, who was the Rav HaRoshi at the time. He sent it to Ratzi Pesach Frank, who was the Av Beis Din in Yerushalayim. And also, the way it was described, he sent it to a new and upcoming young posek, Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. So each of these three reviewed his psak, and they had some comments where they didn't agree fully with some of his logic, but ultimately they all concluded that it should be mutter. I'm not going to go through word by word, but the last page of the handout is a summary from Rav Tokachinsky of the responses that he got from the 3 rabbanim. So at last, the last 2 items where this comes into play, can a child be a dental hygienist for the parent? Inevitably, in the course of doing the cleaning, the gums bleed. So the shaila was brought to Rav Elyashiv, and his response was no. Get someone else to do it. The last question that was brought to him was, can a child, for a parent, for example, needs to prick their finger to get some blood to test for blood sugar, let's say, if they're diabetic. So can the child be the one to prick the finger? And again, his answer was no. Alavai, we should never come on to need our children to do these things for us.
Shmuel.
Have a good
Can
day.
I ask you a question, Shmuel?
Do we have a minion? Oh, we have a minion. Oh, man, thank you.
Rabbi Leifer.
Yes.
Rabbi Leifer.
Rabbi Saini, Yishem Adonai Vayrach, Me'atov Yad Olam, V'shus Madron Rabban Sai, Devarech Eloheinu Shechalnu Mishalo,
Wait, do my page.
Baruch Eloheinu Shechalnu Mishalo, Devochayinu, Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam, Hazon Es Olam Kilot V'Eloheinu Chesed Rachum Zin Lechem Kol V'Sot Yom Kashto, Uvtevo Agadol Tamid Lo Chasalanu V'Al Yasalanu Mazon Yolam V'Ed, Pavu Shmo Agadol Ki Hu Elzon V'Neis L'Kol Ameti L'Kol Amekim Mazon L'Chavu Yisov V'Shavara, Baruch Ato Adonai Hazon Es Kol. Allah Oretz Al Hamazon. It's whenever Achamav Yerushalayim, amen. Who hated from me to be one who come along with I'm trouble over. Umi called to Yalam Ali Hasrein.
and that he's very.
There's a restriction working the other way. Okay. Let's check.
Yeah, and unless the fries.
Child.
What's better to go with,
I don't think so. You would be able to do it. The prohibition is only a child to a parent, not a parent to a child. Right.
Rabbi Leifer,
Right.
Rabbi Leifer,
Sorry, I remember reading about in a paper a long time ago, right, that this gentleman goes to a shiur for Rabbi Eliyashiv. You mentioned Rabbi Eliyashiv, so in the to see him, so this reminded me, I don't know if you heard the story. And he said, why is Rav Papa and his son is mentioned at a shiur?
Right.
You heard this?
No.
No. So he said, Eliyashiv said, he always went Bishara and Gemara. He always had a compromised position that everybody can accept. So he was so hurt to have
10
these
children
10
who
sons, right, who followed his footsteps, and then, so this guy that hears this at a shiur goes home, and I forget what the computer source is that they used to check out the Gemara, right, and he said, I only see 9 times, not 10. So he goes to that Rav Papa's name was mentioned in the Gemara from Shara. So he goes ahead to one of his son-in-laws, I forgot which one it was, and he says, I think your father made a mistake, because I went on and it says only 9. So the guy looks at him straight in his face and says, you think that computer program is better than my father-in-law? This Gemara says it's not Rav Zera, it's Rav Papa, and he doesn't know. But the computer doesn't know that. No, what my father-in-law ever knew. I always remember this story whenever I have a see him. And today you said Rabbi Yasha, so that was it's a good story. And I was reading also it was over the weekend about the minhag for Sephardim and Ashkenazim with names. He was saying this person that the minhag to name of the dead people for Ashkenazim is only about 1,000 years old. He said there was a period of time where so many people were dying, so to kind of keep the name alive, they named their children. But I was really thinking, so I guess it's happy and sad when you come to a naming. So it's missing.
The name even after the living.
Right, I just think to have a Zeta, see that his grandchild is being named after him.
Right.
That must be a special, very, very special feeling that you're. It just I never thought it from that perspective. Anyway, it says today everything went well. Thank you. Share. Let me see if I can take off the recording.
Oh, so the whole story of Rav Papa.
Okay. So it's not the worst booking the Torah.
Hey, Mandy.